Hey guys, John with preselling.com here, and I'm going to be doing a little bit of a breakdown of one of our more recently sold deals. This was a community request, so happy to oblige. So essentially, these are two parks that we bought out in pretty much middle of nowhere in Kentucky, Mount Vernon, Kentucky. Very, very small population. And here's Lexington, Kentucky, and Cincinnati, Louisville. There's Lexington, Kentucky. So gives you a little bit of a frame of reference there. So here's the first one. It's actually a 12 unit mobile home park in the middle of the city. And if I drag onto Street View, you'll get a rough idea that it's not Class A living, but it's decent for some of the units. Now, when we bought this, everything sucked. It was really, really bad, really rough. So this is a significant improvement from what we previously had it as. You can see that's pretty rough shape right there, but this one's a lot nicer. So if you go into the park a little bit, you can see some of the units aren't in great shape, but everything's generally speaking clean with the exception of some kind of trash like this. So again, we did what we could in order to get this better than it was. So you can go all the way down to the end there. A little trash dumpster. Tenants would always complain about the dumpster making noises. But we put a trash dumpster there because there wasn't one originally. So crazy how you're going to get a massive trash pile up if you don't have a dumpster. So again, it's not tip-top condition right this second, but it's better than what it used to be. So we'll scroll back out here and I will show you the other one, which was down the road. And this one was on the side of a hill. So you can see it's very odd topography there. We'll go ahead and go in as much as we can. Street View won't let us go all the way in, though, unfortunately. So if we just look at it up the road, you'll see some stuff that we did, which is we added 2 dumpsters, and then we also added some mailboxes. If you can believe it, there were no mailboxes and there were no dumpsters beforehand. So simple little fixes like that. You can see the hill is pretty steep. So what we did is we re-graveled the road for about $5,000, and we did that twice just to give it a really good solid layer of gravel. So just some basic improvements there. You can see there's a lot of units that are currently sitting there. Those are all tenant-owned home now, or they're on rent-to-own basis. When we bought this, it originally was not all one way or the other. So we just got these and said, hey, we're going to make them all tenant-owned homes because we want tenants to own them, not us. And that's pretty much what we did. So let me crack down on the math a little bit here. So I made a table in advance, so I don't want to just jump ahead on all of it, but I'll just kind of walk you through of what we did and why. So our initial price that we bought this at was $335,000. So that was for 2 parks. That's already a pretty decent deal, but we didn't really walk into crazy equity. If anything, if we were buying this all cash, it would probably be worth maybe around $250,000. And that's because price versus terms, there's a trade-off there. So what we did is we said, hey, seller, you're going to end up owing a fortune in taxes if you sell, because he had bought them for like $100K or something really low. So he was going to have a very large tax bill that would have been due in 1 calendar year if he sold all at once. So we said, hey, you should sell it over time by doing it as an installment sale. This would be seller financing or contract for deed. Essentially, the IRS says, hey, any profit you receive from the gain that you had, we'll spread that out depending on the calendar year. So we were able to keep him at a lower tax bracket because he didn't have so much profit in the same calendar year. If you make $1 million in 1 calendar year, you're basically paying 50% in taxes, or for long-term capital gains, it'd be more like 15 to 20%, but you get the point. You'd be paying a lot of money if you earn a lot of money. So we just spread it out over time for him. So our payment to the seller was $2,228 a month. The nice thing on this is it was 100% financed. So we did a contract for deed on both of those properties, and we did it as 100% seller financing. Now, this was good because we just asked the seller, do you want to pay more in taxes or less in taxes? The natural answer for most people is typically, I want to pay less in taxes. So they actually ended up asking to go as high as they could when we just asked them the question of saying, well, would you like to finance more and how much? And they said, well, I don't see why we can't do 100%. So we actually financed the entire thing, 100% financed. And That was on a 30-year amortization at 7% interest. So the seller got a pretty fair deal, in my opinion. 7% is a pretty good rate for them, and we bought for more than it was worth at the time. Now that's the seller's setup at the beginning. What we did with it was a little different. So we did not have to raise any capital, so we didn't have to bring in a limited partner, we didn't have to raise a giant down payment or anything like that. It was literally just walk in the door and start operating the property. So here's what the numbers look like on day one. Was $3,500 per month roughly in gross rent, and then about $1,000 a month in expenses. So that means our net income per month, net operating income is NOI, was about $2,500, and our net operating income per year was $30,000. So at a 8.96 cap rate is what we bought at. So that means that we were buying the property where it was making a 8.96% return. So that is a $335,000 value, which is what we bought it for. Now, that's obviously going to be zero profit because we are buying it for what it's worth, more or less. If you want, I could even say the cap rate could probably be 10% or call it 8%, and that would affect this number. But what's really important is what we did within 75 days. So that's 2.5 months. What we were able to do is get collections up to $8,000 without raising rent on anybody, too, might I add. Our expenses went up a little bit, and then our net income shot up by a lot. So you can see our net income per year more than doubled. It went up by a factor of basically 2.5x. It was 2.5x the original number. So that led to a significant increase in property value, because if something makes more money, then it's worth more. That's how commercial real estate and multifamily real estate work. It's also how businesses and the rest of the planet works. Single family does not operate off that concept. So we got the value up to about $826,000 for zero out of pocket within 75 days on a deal that was 100% financed. So we did a really good job handling this property because it was rampant with issues such as evictions, fraud. We had one of the tenants impersonate us, so they were trying to run around collecting rent. We had people that just weren't paying at all. We had some issues with crime in the parks, and we got all that handled within 75 days. These were issues that the seller did not want to deal with, or the seller couldn't deal with, maybe because they were remote. We got on-site property management. And when I say on-site, I meant they go on-site, not they live in the park. That is a different type of management. But we were able to get a property management company set up. We basically built them just so that they could operate for us. And we did this 100% remotely, 100% from a computer, with zero money out of pocket, without even raising any capital. If we did have to raise capital on this one, we probably would have only raised like $20,000, $30,000 just to have a little extra cash in the bank just to get it going. But it shot up in value very, very quickly. We ended up having it appraised, and it appraised for $800,000 about 1 year later after we bought it. Plus or minus a few days, but it was basically 1 year later, so 365 days. And it appraised both of those for $800,000, so it's not just my word. We did end up selling it at a slight haircut from that because nobody wants to pay exact sticker value. So if you see me reference in some of the other videos on how it was, we got it worth $800K, that's because I'm talking about the appraisal. Sales are slightly different. So we still sold for a very healthy profit of $700K, but we were able to do that in pretty much just the first 75 days is really where a lot of the value add occurred. So just getting rid of riffraff tenants that just weren't going to be cooperative. We didn't raise rent on anybody during those 75 days. I want to make that really clear. We just got people that were already living there. We just got them to cooperate and pay rent. And we also infilled a couple of units by saying, hey, here's a vacant unit. Somebody else can walk in here and take it. I'm also only counting lot rent on this. I'm not counting rent to own income. Our actual collections were like 11,000, but rent to own income does not count the same, because if I'm renting to owning, or if somebody's going to rent to own something from me, eventually they're going to own it, which means it's not income I can depend on forever. It's only until they complete all their payments. So we had about a $500,000 profit by day 75 based off of the fair market value, about a little over $500,000 profit according to appraised value. In reality, we had just shy of $500,000 profit. And then here's let me drag this down so it's a little more clear. So here's what it looked like from a partnership standpoint. So there was 3 partners, J, M, and L. So I'm Jay, this is John. So So I had 40% equity, and then M had 40% equity, and then L had 20% equity. Here's what everyone was kind of responsible for. So I was mostly in charge of acquisition, finance, and taxes. M was in charge of legal, contractors, and acquisition. So there's a little bit of an overlap there. And then management, contractors, and email. So again, an overlap there as well. So that's good because then we had 1 to 2 people working on every category, but with one person is like primary and one person is secondary. So that's kind of how the roles went down. Now, the end result with taxes and the end result with finance is it good output? It doesn't mean, hey, you have to do 500 hours a year or 500 hours a week just to hit that goal. It's just, is it done correctly? So due to the nature of, can we acquire this correctly? Is the finance situation set up well? And is the tax situation set up well? Then you don't have to spend infinite hours on these things. So I actually only ended up spending an average of 20.9 minutes per week. I know this because we keep track of our meetings, and I was able to just go back and look over the chat logs. So hours to date spent by day 75 was only 37 or 3.7. By appraisal time, it was 18.2, and by sale, it was about 27.2. So this is going to be missing a few other things, but as far as the formal meetings, which is like 90% of the time, then that's what's tracked in there. And you can see our dollar an hour there, for me at least, is $54,000 an hour by day 75, and then it kind of tapers off and goes down. So when we were at appraisal time frame, it would be a little bit over 10,000, and then by sale, it's about 6,000 to 7,000. Now, why do I put dollar an hour in there, and why is dollar an hour important? It's not so you can sound super douchey of saying, oh, look at this, I make all this money, blah, blah, blah. It's about efficiency. So how efficient are you buying stuff? Because I know a lot of people that end up working at $50 to $100 an hour, but if you can start putting yourself onto a higher echelon of here's how much my time is worth, it will direct you towards the right things, because I can do acquisition, finance, and taxes quickly. Somebody else might not be able to do it as quickly. So I would have a higher dollar an hour for those roles, which means that I need to work on those roles. And that's called skill leverage. So somebody else might be better at responding to emails or doing something else like that. Or maybe I don't want to respond to emails because it would take up too much time. So it's not about making 100% of the pie. It's about basically about getting the right parts of the pie. Do you like the crust, or do you like the middle or the side or whatever? So that's kind of how that breakdown works. So everybody made a pretty healthy chunk, made about 200, he made about 200, he made about 100. So based on these numbers here, and that's also accounting for the accumulated NOI over time, because we had a lot of net income that we received on this. So it was actually spitting off cash as we were owning this. And what's kind of important to note, this was not like my 20th deal. This was actually, I think, my third like big deal I had ever done. Right, so I bought one park before that in Georgia. We bought a 5-plex in Pennsylvania, and then we bought this, which was in September of 23. Yeah, September 2023. So about 2 years ago. It was pretty new, all things considered. I mean, within the first 3 deals. So, and it was probably one of the best deals for sure, because 100% financing is always really nice. And then another item, just because I'm sure I'll get a question about this, why is it contract for deed versus seller financing? It's because the seller had other loans on the property. So if they were to do seller financing, they would have to pay off those loans, because it would have to clear off the liens or clear off the deed as it transfers over to us. So, and it would show up as a lien on the like during their title search, is whatever their current loans are that they have. However, if we do it as a contract for deed, it's saying it's contract for deed. And it's after we complete the contract, i.e. make all the payments, then it becomes a transfer over to us. So what we did is we essentially just put in their verbiage saying, make sure you pay your current loans, and they're your responsibility, not ours. Otherwise, we'll sue you for damages. And then that allowed the seller to continue doing his loans. It's possible that somebody else could find out about that and say, hey, due on sale, but it's a lot safer to do it that way rather than subject to, because with subject to, you're actually transferring ownership of the property and just neglecting to pay off the loans, versus this is saying, we haven't actually transferred the ownership of the property yet, and therefore you're okay to continue having the loans. So it's kind of up in the air of like, does it count as a sale or does it not count as a sale? 9 times out of 10, it's not going to count as a sale. So it's a lot safer than doing, say, subject to or something like that. quick predication though, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not a CPA, but I would like to think I know a little bit of what I'm talking about. So take everything I'm saying with a grain of salt, but not formal legal advice, not formal CPA advice. So hopefully you guys found this a little interesting and hopefully a little, I don't want to say like inspiring, but like knowing that you can do this pretty easily and you can do it as soon as your third deal. Maybe I got really lucky on this one. Maybe, that could have been better. I don't know. So it's just simply sharing, here's what I did. And some of y'all have found that pretty helpful in the past. So hopefully you found this, as mentioned, helpful. So